Here I go, here I go, here I go. Yeah, here I go, here I go, here I go.
Before we get into today's episode of the pod, you guys have to subscribe because I'm looking at you and you're not subscribed to the channel yet. And you have to hit the notification bell because you're not going to know when I post if you don't have notifications when I post. Make sure to like the video, you guys, so I know you guys are enjoying these episodes. Make sure to follow my social medias. I will pop them on the screen so you can stay up to date with everything to do with this podcast. And then don't forget to check out the Spotify version. The link will be in the description for that as well. Finally, I am a sports writer, so make sure to check out the take.sport.blog so you can read the best sports articles ever. You will not regret clicking that link, so make sure to click that link below. But let's go ahead and get into today's pod, you guys.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Take Podcast. I am your host, Jackson Burleson, of course, and in today's episode, I have a special guest, Coach Schepps, who is the founder of Toilets to Titles Sports Network. I appreciate you hopping on the podcast to take some time to talk some football.
Excellent. Hey, man, I'm happy to be here. It's Coach Schepps. It gets mixed up, here and there. Sometimes people add an E at the end, Schepps, but it's Coach Schepps. And man, I'm glad you reached out, fellow Cowboys fan. I'm looking forward to talking, man.
I'm glad you bring that up. So that was honestly where I was going to steer. So we're both Cowboys fans, obviously, and it's kind of hard to go unnoticed that we don't have Ezekiel Elliott this year. So where do you think he fits in best?
Well, I had Kyle Yeomans on the show before the draft, like 2 weeks prior to the draft. We do a Cowboys show at the Toilets to Titles Network, Now About Them Cowboys. And to be honest, I think where he fits best is back in Dallas on a lower salary. I think, Ronald Jones, we'll see what happens there. I think I think it's a Tony Pollard show. We didn't draft a running back. I think it's really Tony Pollard for 1 year, and then next year's class we'll probably draft somebody. We brought in that fullback from North Dakota State. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he'll probably be our short yardage guy. He was pretty decent there, undrafted free agent. I would like to see Zeke back in Dallas just because, him and Dak's relationship. Zeke's a competitor. He's tough. He wants to win. And I think he's a good locker room guy, and he's evolved. He's grown up. So that's where I think the best spot is, but it's like pulling off a Band-Aid slowly or pulling it off quickly. And I think pulling it off quickly would be having him sign somewhere else. Now, I think somewhere cold, like Buffalo or, one of those, maybe even like, I hate to say it, but with the Giants, to give, Barkley, somebody to spell him and get some of those tough yardage touches, somewhere where they have a young back. He could, only get a few touches early in the season and then work up throughout the season and get ready for the playoffs. And then on the opposite of what we did, we wore him out by the playoffs. I think it'd be a team that's smart, that knows they're going to the playoffs, that could get him and ease him into a role. And then when it's playoff football, cold weather, boom, be ready to go.
I think the Giants make sense because Saquon Barkley has not signed his franchise tag yet. So he's kind of looking for that long-term deal. So he could very well depart from New York, and the Giants could be looking for a running back.
Yeah, and the GM even could pitch it like, hey, give us 1 year. Next year we'll let you test the market. And here, we're going to bring in Zeke. So we're going to show you we're not going to run you into the ground so that next year you can go make your money. Have kind of a second option there. Maybe that'll be something that'll entice him.
I agree with you on the lower salary part because Zeke was just so good in the red zone last year. I mean, he had 12 touchdowns. Even though he didn't run for 1,000+ yards, he was still very effective when you gave it to him on the goal line, which is super valuable in my opinion.
Yeah. He just looked tired. He looked tired. He didn't have that pop. Like, I don't know if he'll ever have it again. It's hard to say. It stinks seeing him have it somewhere else though.
But what's our ceiling for the Cowboys this year? Like, what do you think's the highest we can reach this year?
I mean, I think honestly, with this roster, I think we only got better. And we added, I think Maisie Smith or Mozzie, however you want to pronounce it, I think he makes Van Der Esch's job easier, Damone Clark's job easier, Michael Parsons' job easier, DeMarcus Lawrence. Like he helps the pass rush, he helps the linebackers. And when you help the pass rush and the linebackers, in turn, you help the secondary. So I think our defense is going to be better. We brought in Stephon Gilmore, who won a Defensive Player of the Year.
That was a big one, I think. I think that's a game changer because him and Diggs on the outside, I think that's the best cornerback duo in football.
We have a lot of young, impressionable defensive backs. Like as far as corners go, Diggs is young, Deron Bland is young, and I think bringing in a guy like Stephon Gilmore, who's been there before, won a Super Bowl, won a Defensive Player of the Year, he can show these guys like, hey, if you want to take the next step, this is the road you need to take. So I think our defense will be better. And then I think Tyler Smith will take a step. Obviously Tyron Smith, it's tough to say where he'll be. So I think the offensive line will at least be as good as last year. But with Brandon Cooks, I think so. I think it's NFC Championship game or bust, possibly, hopefully a Super Bowl run.
The thing is, like, I'm not a huge Dak fan. This is my last year. This is my last chance I'm going to give Dak. If he doesn't make it to the NFC Championship, we need to draft a quarterback and we need to just focus on the future, try to trade him and get something for him. That's what I think we should do if we don't make it to that point.
I hear you, but I think we had some inconsistency. Pollard going down hurt the offense. Like I don't think Dak is somebody who is going to carry us, but I think he's good enough to win. I think he's tough. I think he's a competitor. I think his teammates like him. I think his teammates respect him, which is huge because you see some organizations in the NFL when the team doesn't respect the quarterback, there's a major drop off. I think the team knows Dak's willing to do whatever it takes. A lot of the interceptions he threw last year, drop balls, tipped balls, out of his control. So do I think he could take us on his back to the Super Bowl? I think he's capable of 1 or 2 playoff games in a 4-game stretch where he carries us. I don't think he can carry us for 4. But I respect him. And also, here's the thing. Parsons is going to be due for his contract. Diggs is going to be due for his contract. Lamb's going to be due for his contract. So we have a lot of guys about to go into their prime and their peak. Can we afford to bring in a young quarterback and groom him? Because really, if you have all these weapons around that young quarterback, what do you think the offensive coordinator is going to do for the first 2 years? They're going to try to reel it in, run the football, and protect this guy and just have him drive the bus. We have the bus driver right now, essentially.
I would say that if we had a rookie quarterback behind him now, because I think we missed a very big opportunity on not drafting a quarterback this year. Which
who would you have taken?
I would have taken either Dorian Thompson-Robinson or Max Duggan. One of those two guys, put him behind Dak for a solid year or two, let him develop, let him learn the game, and then see what happens from there. But we just don't have anybody. I mean, Cooper Rush is no threat to Dak Prescott's job, which I think doesn't motivate Prescott enough because he doesn't have that rookie.
Oh, you think Prescott's not motivated?
I'm not going to say he's not motivated because everyone wants to win. It's just
I think that guy's got enough fire for the whole roster. That guy, he built a football field in his backyard. He's got the players over every day in the offseason. I think he doesn't need a backup to light his fire.
But there's like a lot of question marks with his accuracy. Can he put the football in front of the receiver? That is something I have stressed so much because, and also with the interceptions, like a lot of his interceptions come in zone coverage. Like, has he learned how to throw against zone coverage effectively? Has he learned how to do that? Those are two things I'm kind of looking at because if he's putting the ball behind the receiver, I mean, we saw it time and time again where Lamb would have to slow down in his route to catch the ball, which is not good. You want a receiver at full speed so he can take off and just run.
I hear that, but I don't think Max Duggan is doing that either. I think, I don't think he's capable of doing that. I think Dak's ceiling is, I hear you. I think there's things, but also the offense coordinator needs to read the room. Like we're driving a lot of his interceptions too are coming in situations where we don't need to be throwing the football, So like we're driving, we get the turnover before the half, we're ready to go push it in, and then we're throwing it deep down the seam. Like let's settle for a field. I just think I'm interested to see. I'm going to give him one more year. I'm going to see how he looks with McCarthy. I'm going to see how he looks with Cooks, with a healthy Tony Pollard. An offensive line taking a step. Let's see. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm willing to give him a year because no Kellen Moore, I think, will benefit him a little bit better, but I think Kellen Moore is going to do a lot better on the Chargers with Herbert.
Yeah, and Eckler, and Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Like they got some weapons over there.
They got a team.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: is there only truly one Super Bowl contender in the NFC?
Oh man, no, I think San Francisco. San Francisco is the team. I think Philly's really good. So Philly, they're a Super Bowl contender, hands down. Phenomenal roster, excellent quarterback. Their head coach is a jerk off, but it doesn't matter because the quarterback's the leader of that team, I think, and he balances that team out, and they're super talented. And the 49ers, I think the 49ers are right there. They are so from Bosa to Warner to Greenlaw to Hufanga, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Debo, Ayuk. They're just top to bottom. I think the 49ers scare me. I
Who's the
think we
quarterback though? Who's the quarterback? Purdy or Lance? Because I don't know who you go with because Brock Purdy played so well in the playoffs last year, but Lance didn't get to play at all. So
they go with whoever's healthy because Darnold's there too now.
oh
So
yeah, they do have Darnold. I forgot about that too.
and their system, Shanahan is such a good coach at creating. He creates open passing windows, like wide open passing windows for his quarterback, easy reads. And I say easy coming from a guy who's not playing in the NFL. So easy for an NFL quarterback,
Yeah.
got Christian McCaffrey, Elijah McGuire should be coming back. I think whoever's the quarterback there, I would go with Lance. I would give him the start of the season just because you invested the draft capital in him. And then you could close that door if he doesn't produce because your defense is going to carry you. Even if Lance comes out the gate sputtering, say the first 3 or 4 games, your defense and your running game should allow you to stay 500. And then you can move on. And then at least all right, the Lance project is done. You move on to Purdy and then have Darnold be Purdy's backup and you try to get Lance to a new team.
Yeah, I agree. Just let Lance start the year and then see kind of what happens from there.
Detroit's dangerous. I don't know if they're a Super Bowl contender. Minnesota's dangerous. I don't know if they're a Super Bowl contender, but they'll both be in the playoffs. And we played Detroit late in the season.
What's going on with Dalvin Cook right now? Why are they? What's going on with Dalvin Cook? Like they're talking about cutting him or whatever they're doing.
Post June 1st to save some cap. I mean, you add Jordan Addison, a former Biletnikoff winner, next to Justin Jefferson. Their passing attack is strong with, they brought in TJ Hawkinson. So maybe they feel they don't need Dalvin Cook. Maybe they feel he's been hurt a lot over the last 2 or 3 years. So Dalvin Cook would be an interesting piece. Obviously, anyone who's got a big name is going to be mentioned with the Dallas Cowboys just because that's the way the media works. That's going to draw ratings, and agents know that once you mention the Cowboys, their player is going to be discussed. So, but they got some young backs who can play, and their passing attack is so dynamic that, they could afford to move on from a guy like Dalvin Cook.
What about like Dalvin Cook going to a team like the Ravens where they are like a run heavy kind of type of offense? Do you think that would kind of work out?
Yeah, I think, they got Dobbins, they got Gus Edwards still, but Dobbins is a guy who, he's had some injuries. His injury took him a little longer to recover than people expected. He was up and down last year. Even Miami, even though they drafted Devon Achane, I think Dalvin Cook would look great in that rushing attack, that zone rushing attack. If McCaffrey wasn't there in San Francisco, I'd say San Francisco is a decent option for him. I think a team that plays fast, it would be a good spot. If New Orleans moves on from a guy like Alvin Kamara, you come in, it's not going to be as dynamic, but maybe a better inside in between the tackles runner than, I know they drafted Zach Evans though, or Kendry Miller, one of those former TCU backs. So, somewhere with a high flying offense with the downhill run game, zone blocking scheme.
So what's your Super Bowl prediction? Just early Super Bowl prediction, like as of right now.
Man, I think the Bengals get back there. I do. So I think obviously I'd say another AFC championship game between the Bengals and the Chiefs. I think the Bengals advance. I think the Bills blow it up after this year. I think Josh Allen, Diggs, the relationship's going to sputter. I think you're going to see Stephon Diggs end up somewhere else next year. So I don't think they make it to the AFC Championship. And then as far as the NFC goes,
It can be anybody, really. I mean, I think the Eagles are the front runners, obviously, because Jalen Hurts. But my question mark is they don't have Miles Sanders. So are they going to be as effective at running back?
well, they brought in Rashad Penny, right? And I believe
He's been hurt like all the time, I feel like.
there's another back they brought in.
They
Oh,
still
DeAndre
have-
Swift.
Well, they still have a bunch of other dudes, though.
They brought in DeAndre Swift. So
Okay.
So
That might be
Swift's a little-
a kicker then.
Swift's a little, he's got the injury history. Penny's got the injury history. They still got Scott. They still got Gainwell. So they rotate backs. Fantasy wise, you're gonna be frustrated if you own any of those backs in fantasy. But as far as the NFL goes, they're gonna just rotate and keep those guys fresh.
That's the thing. Like when you draft like Eagles running backs, they're either really, really good or you're just like dropping them and then trying to find the next Eagles running back.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's tough. It's tough being a manager with an Eagles back on your roster.
I'm ready for fantasy football this year, though. I'm super excited for it. I think Bryce Young is going to be a sleeper quarterback pick, though. In my opinion,
Who's he throwing it to?
nobody, but he's Bryce Young. He's going to be elusive in the pocket. He's going to be able to get you running yards. Just because NFL teams don't have that film on him yet, they're not going to have him figured out. So as a rookie quarterback, I think he's going to be pretty dangerous just because of that elusive ability he does have. He kind of reminds me of Russell Wilson, the way he can just kind of maneuver his way out of the pocket when he gets in trouble. And he can still keep his eyes upfield when he is in trouble too. I mean, he just doesn't stop. I mean, he's a smart quarterback. Like no one gives him enough credit. Everyone just talks to him about like, oh, he's too small. Like he's not big enough to play quarterback. Like I get it. Like height is a big issue because you can't see over the line. But at the same time, like there's a lot of players like Drew Brees. He was like 5'10", 5'11". They had him at 6 foot, but that's just because they had him at 6 foot. But I think there's always been short quarterbacks that have been good in this league. And I think with his IQ, I think he should be starting right out of the gate.
Yeah, he probably will. They drafted Mingo from Ole Miss. They brought in Adam Thielen. They got Terrace Marshall. I think letting go of a guy like DJ Moore definitely affects that offense. Letting go of a guy like Christian McCaffrey affects that offense. So I think he'll be an ascending player.
They have Miles Sanders too, so that's a good one.
To Trevor Lawrence's first year. Like I think he's going to struggle a bit, but I think by year 2 they'll probably put some more weapons around him. They'll probably have some more money. They still have some good draft capital. So I think we'll see flashes. I think we'll see that he is an NFL top 10 quarterback in the future. But I don't think it's going to be all smooth sailing for the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young this year. But we'll see that he was worthy of the selection.
Yeah. Do you think CJ Stroud should have been picked over him?
That's tough. For me, analyzing quarterbacks is one of the hardest things to do. I struggle with it. CJ Stroud, his draft cycle was a roller coaster, right? So it was Young, then Stroud early in the process. Then the buzz came up with Levis, right? And now he's passing Stroud. Then he drops behind Stroud. Then Richardson passes Stroud. And then the combine comes up. Stroud looks like the best thrower there. He goes number 1 in mock drafts. Then the test scores come out. And then he falls to like number 3 or 4. So and these are people that have been doing this for a living for a long time, judging him. So it's hard for me to put a finger on it. But I will tell you this. I think the Texans are a better situation for him than the Panthers. I think, obviously the Texans have been a mess in the past, but I think that I think the offensive line is decent. I think they got some backs behind them. I think they have some tight ends who can catch their wide receivers, bringing in a guy like Tank Dell. He's a playmaker. John Mechie, he's supposedly healthy. So I think year 1, I think we see CJ Stroud outplay Bryce Young. But I think over time, it'll change. But year 1, I like CJ Stroud.
What's your take on Anthony Richardson? What do you think he's going to do on the Colts this year? I think he's going to be dangerous. this year.
Yeah. I think like what you were saying about Bryce Young with teams aren't gonna have film on him. I think with a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, teams aren't gonna have much film on him. I think we'll see how creative the Colts offensive play caller is. We'll see how dynamic Jonathan Taylor is because, let's see if they can run those read options. Let's see how Jonathan Taylor handles it because it should create having a rushing quarterback like Anthony Richardson should create some rushing lanes for Jonathan Taylor. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to eat if he can stay healthy. They brought in Josh Downs, who, in my opinion, he's super, super dynamic slot receiver, so precise, so aggressive, so much burst, great hands. Anthony Richardson's going to have a guy like him to move the chains. And then, Pittman on the outside. I like the passing attack. So I think we saw Richardson come out the gate a little cold. He got better down the stretch, but there's a lot of questions about his consistency and how capable he is of being an actual NFL quarterback, like throwing the football. So it'll be interesting to see, but it's in turf, it's indoors. He's in a controlled environment in a controlled climate half the games of the season. So I think there's going to be some highlight worthy plays from this kid.
I think so. There's no question he can make the throws, but will they go with Gardner Minshew right out of the gate because they did sign him? So I don't
know. I don't know if that seems like a Jim Irsay move. I don't know. Jim, what do you think, Jim Irsay? Like, it's hard to get into his head, but I could see him pushing for this young star to play early and fill the seats.
I could see that because they haven't had they've been really struggling to find that guy since Andrew Luck retired, which I really wish he didn't retire because Andrew Luck was so good. He was such a fun quarterback to watch, but the injuries kind of just killed him, in my opinion. But
I think it'll say a lot about how Anthony Richardson is picking up the offense if he's not starting week one. If he's not starting week one, people need to be a little concerned, I think.
Because if you can't, it's a lot of play, the playbook is hard to take in itself as a rookie quarterback. It's going to be new for him because he's only played 2 years of college football. So he doesn't have
the OC's job. The OC's job is to help him and kind of mold the playbook to become familiar with Richardson, familiar to what he's used to, and then eventually expand. Like the OC's got to get this kid ready. Because he's dynamic. He's a playmaker,
He reminds me of Deshaun Watson with his ability to run the football.
I think he's a bigger, more explosive, more physical, and Deshaun Watson, he's a great passer. Deshaun Watson is, obviously you're talking about the running skills, but Deshaun Watson can do it all. I think Richardson is just explosive. That's the word. That's how I would describe him. He's a big physical freak who, he's got to hone his craft and become a better thrower of the football.
Where do you think the Browns stack up in the AFC North this year?
Man, the Steelers, the Ravens, I think the Ravens are either going to do very well or do very bad. I wouldn't be surprised if after this season we see Harbaugh. This might be the last year for Harbaugh in Baltimore. So I think Baltimore is going to be up and down. Pittsburgh's ascending, but I don't know if they have a quarterback who's talented enough to take another step this year. Najee Harris seems to have taken a step back. I love George Pickens. That defense is strong. But now you think about Cleveland, Nick Chubb doesn't get any respect. He might not even stay in Cleveland. It seems like they're trying to move on from him, but he's one of the best running backs in the NFL, hands down. They bring in Elijah Moore. They got a strong offensive line. Amari Cooper is probably one of the top 3 best route runners in the NFL. They got some good corners on the outside, some good linebackers. I think.
Yeah, they got Myles Garrett, obviously. I think he's the best pass rusher in the NFL.
They might be the most well-rounded. They might be the most well-rounded team in the AFC North, in my opinion.
I agree.
Besides the Bengals, that's not fair because I'm saying Bengals. So I'm not even talking about the Bengals because the Bengals are in a class of their own. The Bengals are one of the best teams in the AFC. So I think underneath the Bengals, it's Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and of those 3, Cleveland is the most well-rounded.
So you think the Bengals have a better defense than the Browns?
I think the Bengals have a better roster than the Browns.
I think the Bengals secondary is very shaky at times.
I like Dax Hill, and they brought in Jordan Battle. So it is shaky at times, but I think we're going to see two young guys step up in that secondary, and they got a strong, like, very physical defensive line, with Hubbard, and it'll be interesting to see, and can they protect Burrow? Like, that'll be a big question, but the Bengals have shown they can do it. Last year they started a little choppy, and we beat them. The Cowboys beat them early on, but the Bengals are legit. 2 years in a row, like, stamp them, like they're legitimate.
I don't think the Bengals, I mean, obviously they need to protect Joe Burrow, but like they don't have to, because when they made the Super Bowl, he was getting sacked like 4 or 5 times in a game. So like they don't need to protect him to win. They've proven that they don't need to.
They don't need to protect him to win now, but if they want to win in 3 or 4 years with Joe Burrow at quarterback, they need to protect him, because if they don't, his career is not going to be very long.
No, especially with the ACL injury that he already had, it's going to really affect him.
Okay.
But is there anything else you would like to say before I kind of close this out? I know you're kind of short on time, but.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you having me on. I love talking, NFL, fantasy football, all that stuff. I'm looking forward to summer, where hopefully, we see some good things from the Cowboys offense. I'm looking forward to seeing Brandon Cooks out there. I'm looking forward to seeing Michael Gallup look healthy. I'm looking forward to seeing this three-headed monster at safety with Donovan Wilson, Jaron Kearse, Malik Hooker, which is probably the last year we're going to see all three of them. Dan Quinn, like, what's going to happen with him? Is he going to end up the head coach? Is he going to end up somewhere else? Because after last year, I thought we weren't going to get him back again. The fact he came back again is huge. So yeah, I'm just excited for some football, man. I really am.
Over under 10 wins, more over under for the Cowboys this year.
Over. I think we at least hit 10. At least, I think that's our floor.
All right. I appreciate you hopping on the podcast. Coach Schepps.
Schepps.
Coach Schepps. I appreciate you for taking the time. Go check out Toilets to Titles. I'll put the link in the description for you guys to go check that out. But this has been another episode of the Take Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Burleson. You guys have a good one.
Yeah. Talk to me, baby. Talk to me nice. I'm from another world, baby, yeah. Broadway paradise. They think I'm way too cold, cause I put my heart up on ice.